Hi guys, Jay with Freedom Media here. You know, we preached the last year about the narrative of the mainstream media, how they like to spin their reports to fit their agenda. They do it time and time again. We've seen it across this country for a long time. After Trudeau spending all his money to make them say what they want to say. We don't like the spins. It's wrong and it can't continue. Tonight I would like to share in its entirety our exclusive interview with the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs, John Ridsdale and Mike Ridsdale, the Hereditary Chiefs in Smithers, BC. This interview we did in June 19th of 2019, and I think it needs to be seen completely, unedited, uncut, for everybody to appreciate it from both sides. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. Please share this out and know that we can't be spinning anything anymore, guys.
A liaison through you guys to actually have the right to tell them, okay, this is what we're looking at.
You can't do that because then they call that consultation.
Oh.
And then everything that they want, they said, well, we consulted you on it and we basically, you're okay in it. You be in the same room as them is being called consultation.
Really?
When this is why Mike will meet on their own and us chiefs won't do it. Because as soon as we're in the room, they call it consultation.
Huh.
So our staff will do it. And that's not consultation, that's collecting data.
That's collecting data.
But as soon as we go into a room, they say that's consultation. Anytime the chiefs go talk to them, that's consultation. Then they put a report, we consulted you. It doesn't tell you what you talked about, but the fact that you're in the room is consultation. In their eyes, to us it's not.
This month is when the certificate for Coastal GasLink expires. It's been 5 years now. And so here we are, 5 years later. When are they going to inform us that they're going to go in and say to the government, can we renew this certificate? I thought First Nations would have a say in that.
Right.
Well, they're getting this is the last month of their certificate. When are we going to get notification that, yes, here's a reissuance or here's a reconsultation on this certificate? What's your say? We didn't get that yet. So are we going to be notified, yeah, we issued them a certificate without consultation? I'm sorry, but we've already made that decision. And oh, here's some more permits that you will never have a say on this one.
You think they would have consulted you already on it?
No, they told us.
Notices from them on a Friday and they want an answer by Sunday. They put a date on there. They didn't tell you it's a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Generally, it comes on long weekends when
nobody's around.
Nobody's around. So
Yeah.
That's part of their consultation portion. Is
in.
when you're not in the office, you got to say by Monday at the latest, which is the holiday Monday, and who's going to be here.
Right.
And if you did, they'd just say, well, it was a holiday, we didn't get it.
No, they say we've taken your consideration or your words into consideration. We don't see it as an infringement on your rights. They don't even describe what infringement means. So why are they even talking infringement if none of the paperwork's, and I've asked them, give us the wording of what you think infringing Wet'suwet'en is.
So,
And they wouldn't say it, but they would give an answer saying, we don't see it as infringing on your rights.
so that's Coastal GasLink themselves then?
No, it's the province are saying we're not seeing it as infringement because the province is the one chartered with the duty to consult. And when when they get that duty, they're supposed to be friends-like. They're supposed to be working with you as a friend to make these decisions on your behalf. But when they're throwing your members in jail, they're not being a very good friend.
Wow.
So, and now I want to kind of, once again, like I was trying to touch base on that. Jake, maybe we'll get you to hold. You got a holder or something for that? No. When it comes down, I'm just going to grab a seat. I have one leg. I have a prosthetic leg.
Oh, no worries.
So it's just kind of get to stand up. And I actually, it's kind of curious
And
that you
good
said.
because this is my seat at the chief's table. So
I find it funny that you were able to see. Are we still recording?
Yeah.
That you went to Geneva because, believe it or not, there is a little bit left on that. If you want to film a little bit, I just saved some. Believe it or not, I just flew in from Geneva, Switzerland yesterday. I landed in and we signed a gentleman on the way to Switzerland by the name of Oris Norwad, if you're familiar with him. He's the head chief human rights and treaties commissioner for the United Nations in Geneva, and he's out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, we stepped out a treaty years ago though.
Yes, I know. This is UN. I don't understand his position. I don't understand what his information is with regards to it. But it was just curious that you had said you had been to Geneva, and I had, because I know the Creator watches over me, and I know that Turtle Island has lots of. I'm grounded with my culture, and I'm totally understanding of everything you're saying. But then we bring into this account of the United Nations, and there is rumor. And this is the dirty question, and I hope I don't offend you, because please, this is not what I'm trying to do at all. But the rumor has it that the United Nations has been funding a lot of the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary chiefs through the Tides Foundation, which has been giving money towards the paid protesters. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude. This is
You're
just
getting us mixed up with somebody else. We don't, this office, we're the chiefs, we're the board of directors. If we have no core funding, but if we're gonna do water quality, we'll take $10,000, go do some, but nothing to what you're alluding to there.
right.
We simply would not accept that. We actually have a code of ethics, and we also have policy, and also all employees and our board of directors follow it. And the money aspect is something that we know could lead to something not right,
Right.
so we don't touch it. We simply do not.
So the documents that a lady has provided through her findings of the smear campaign of the oil and gas industry, the documents that were, and I'm sorry, this is the bad part of the reporter side of things.
Oh no, I actually belong to NGOs.
Okay.
Yeah, as an individual, but this office doesn't.
Right.
And that's why I've gone to Geneva. Actually, New York, when I was there last month, it was the Union of BC Indian Chiefs that I went.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
That's
so
where I'm
that's
going tomorrow.
something you're going to tomorrow.
I'm going to First Nation Summit, and there you got First Nation Summit, Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and the Association of First Nations.
And where is that being held?
In Vancouver, we do it 3 days every second month, updates from across Canada.
Should we go?
You ought to be back though.
so one of the big things is that you were saying from Tides Canada.
Yeah.
you take money in from Tides to do water quality.
Sorry, what is that?
Water quality?
Water quality?
So we, in the upper Bulkley area, as you can see, this area's got the upper Bulkley section here.
Mhm.
There's a lot of agricultural use, a lot of townships all utilizing that water. And so we need to determine how much water is being used so that there's enough water for the animals. The problem is agricultural takes a lot of water. There's different water licenses all along the way that
That's
take
right.
a lot of water out.
So it's the allocation.
And so the allocation is being a detriment to these smaller streams that these licenses are on. So we do water quality, determine how much water flow is actually flowing through these certain streams where our salmon are spawning
Right.
and utilizing. So we need to see what the water level is, but also what is agricultural runoff doing to those waterways. as
Right.
well. Every spring, some of the streams that you look at are just tan or just brown
Yeah.
from the manure runoff and everything else through the winter. As that water melts, it goes
Exactly.
into the streams,
Mhm.
and we need to see what level that is. There's people that's still living out on the land, and they're getting their water right out of that.
Mm.
And so they're getting health problems occurring from what's being fed to the animals
Like the
that's going out in their.
like the Aquasasni, like the there's Aquasasni, the other one where Trudeau was going up with the water, the
Oh, yeah.
Atawapskat,
Yeah.
where he promised $4 million to our First Nations to build a new water treatment facility and help with their water mitigation issues. But yet at the same time, he hasn't followed through his promises.
And the government requires at least 5 years of data to give you an idea, or them an idea that there's an issue. So how are we gonna do these sampling? And each sample cost, you're gonna do multiple areas. Each sample that you send out costs $120 to test
Right.
for the results. So we don't have that money, and this is where we look at people like Tides and other NGOs to help supply that money so that we can go out on the land and do this kind of water sampling.
NGOs, that's non-governmental
Organizations.
organizations, right? Okay.
And they're the ones that actually, they're on behalf of the looking on behalf of the environment as well. So if we're doing the good protocol on the land, they will supply us with the money to do this kind of testing.
So you have to meet a quality of standards for them to show your due diligence to enable to allow you access to that money.
And then show the government that it's actually, the information is gonna get shared with the province as well. We go into what's called the Environmental Management Stewardship site, the EMS site, and we put our data on there so that they get the data real time. And so we're not hiding anything. We're giving actually the government more information for them to make better decisions.
So what is the purpose of having to go to NGOs per se as the government for funding to do your research? Why are we having to use an outside third party, whereas our government is, once again, supposed to do what's better, the best for the people, but yet you have no access to funds from the federal government to do this research?
Again, with the federal government in place as it is, we're an organization of hereditary chiefs.
That's right.
We're not part of a band.
Okay, so describe us the difference between hereditary chiefs, and I'm aware, Jay's aware, but for the camera issues, describe maybe to the people at home what it is a hereditary chief, what makes your argument valid as compared to the band.
Well, the bands themselves are a construct of the federal government, and they're elected in from anywhere from 2 to 4 years, depending on what they themselves decide on.
Okay.
And then they go for an election again. I'm a hereditary chief. The name I carry is thousands of years old. And I've been trained for this since I was a child. I've already have people in mind who will lift my name when I pass on. The name will continue forever. There's no cycle, there's no end date to it like an elected one. And you gotta realize that elected chiefs on bands have the same jurisdiction as a municipality. They're only there to look after the infrastructure of the reserve itself.
Right. Yeah.
The territory itself, the 22,000 square kilometers, belongs to each one of our houses and our clans, and we as the high-ranking chiefs, our mandate is to look after it to the best of our abilities and for future generations of all, not just the Wet'suwet'en, of all. And that is the huge difference between elected and hereditary. They have a mandate within basically a municipality, so the elected chief and their council, the same as a mayor and their council. But their term ends and they get to go on. What I don't like is they get to sign long-term agreements after their term is over.
Just like our regular federal government politicians, after
Right.
their term is over,
Yeah.
they get long-term agreements with the same thing. Brian Mulrooney got his airplanes, Paul Martin got his Great Lakes shipping, so there's a little bit of...
Trudeau got his SNC.
Yep.
Thank you for that one, because that's another big key for us as well, so
Well,
that's...
Jody's a friend of mine.
Is she really? We are absolutely dying to speak with Jody.
Wow,
we're
really?
trying to reach
That's-
out. I'm absolutely impressed with her going independent.
Yeah.
And we've actually looked at and have been discussing some ways to try and push these independent people to push and run, because right now the parties, there's a division, and they shouldn't have that. We should have the government officials that are elected as the MPs for your riding should be looking after the people in their riding, not what's
People are
best for
going
their
further
party.
down the list, and industry is moving up, because industry is
Yep.
sharing the dollar.
Yeah.
So where's the people in here? Yes, we get a vote, but no matter what we did, and we've seen it in the past, we go with people, we vote with people, they get there and they toe the party line, and we're thrown into the dirt.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing. So you see it in your own communities, in your own municipalities, within your own culture, as we are seeing within the federal government and what it's doing as well to us in the provincial governments as well.
Yeah.
Now you're starting to see the provincial governments standing up, and Jason Kenney for one, standing up saying no to the carbon tax. Now, I know there's other things, but you're starting to see that coming back to where they're focusing on their own particular provinces.
And the difference is, again, with the elected ones, they gotta stay within the mandate of whatever is best, either for their little political party,
Right.
or what they may say is for the municipality or the reserve.
Yeah, they can't go outside of the mandate.
Our
That's it.
mandate is clean air, clean water, clean land,
Might be kind of
animals,
like
plants. And if we go against that, it's actually our people can remove us. We've had to do it 3 times now.
Yeah.
Because if you are putting yourself, your personal wants before the nation, the land, the air, the water,
Yep.
the people have the right to remove you, and will hold a feast, and their house, their clan will bring it forward that this person is not upholding the name. It's called dirtying your blanket. The worst thing you could do as a high chief is dirty your blanket. It's gotta be clean, cause those people there kept it clean when they wore it.
That's right.
Those are the original board members for this table here when we started in 1994. We put them up there so they could watch us, make sure we're doing the right thing.
Yep.
Right in the center of the table is all the words from don't know to stay away from our elders, so that their words are right there and we can rely on them. Because they are the ones that made this path that we follow. Now, if we're gonna stick our hand out like this, we're committing a crime. They said we'll never be a beggar on our own land.
That's
Never
right.
ever walk around. I'll never suntan my palm. You don't have to, if we look after things right.
That's right, and my
But if
palms are
we-
so white.
If we put ourselves first, then our people suffer, our grandchildren
That's
suffer, our
right.
great grandchildren suffer, and we can't have that. We
And
simply can't.
That's the same thing as for him and myself too, is we don't put ourselves first, we're trying to put the people first.
Yeah.
Because it is our duty to take care of our nation as Canada, and it's our duty to make sure that we, as white, Anishinaabe, and Ojibwe, and Wet'suwet'en, and communities across Canada, to make sure that we take care of one another, and that's the whole goal here.
And the
Don't
big
you think
thing,
the people are gonna think 50 years from now, what the hell were they doing trying to fight to put in a pipeline? Look what we have now. Think about how it's gonna change in 50 years from now, rather than today and what we're arguing about.
Yeah.
There's no forward thinking in this right now.
No, it's all right now.
It's here now.
one of the things that you mentioned when you first got here is that you're part of a nation and the creator is giving you direction on how to work yourself through things and how you do in your own culture, the things that you have to do that you were taught. And we're the same way. We were taught that when you welcome somebody, you welcome in an honest and open manner and a truthful way. When you go into a feast hall, you grab a talking stick. And when you have that talking stick is a truthful way of saying things. That you can't lie when you're talking, using this talking stick. And then when you wanna blow peace, there's an argument and a problem, which we had with one of the pipeline proponents, you blow eagle feathers at them to hold the peace over everybody. And what happened was, the proponent in that case went and said, the Wet'suwet'en held a pagan ritual, and then they covered us
That was
in,
actually in a report less than a decade ago.
yeah,
Wow.
they covered us in what looked like feathers, so they threw some stuff at us that we didn't want. But it was cussed to create peace, so that you
Right.
could have an open and frank discussion without any harsh words or anything bad said. But they said that we were conducting a pagan ritual and unwantedly blowing materials on them, which they believed was feathers. Well, it was eagle feathers.
After an argument had ensued, or a discussion had,
It was to bring the openness of the heart out. It's
Yep.
eagle
Yeah,
down,
so that you
it's
could have a
it's
good
the
talk.
down itself.
absolutely, yeah, it's not the actual feathers, it's the underlying feathers off the dog, yeah. Wow.
So here we're labeled as conducting pagan rituals, which I don't understand because,
You're not pagans.
no, and it's
We're
what we've
First
done
Nation.
for thousands of years.
Wow.
And it's a welcoming ceremony.
Yeah.
And so we're still seen not as a nation within a nation. We're looked at as a body of people that shouldn't be there. They're in the way of what we're wanting to do, so they're just a bunch of people that shouldn't be there. Even when they arrested those people out on Gidimt'en territory, there was a person holding a Laksamishu sign which had the killer whale on it. And Trudeau said it's more than just about protesters. There's a person with a whale sign there, and they're nowhere near the ocean. So even Trudeau was wrong in not knowing Wet'suwet'en custom.
Right.
He doesn't even know who a Chinese or a Japanese person is.
So seeing that and what they're planning on doing, and not even coming here to talk to us about what we have and what we're losing and what we've already lost. You got the Equity mine in another part of Sayou territory, and that mine is a poster child of what not to do.
Is that the molybdenum mine?
It was the old gold mine that still today leachates acid rock
Caustic acid, yeah.
into the waterway,
Yeah.
and it'll be doing it forever. The
Wow.
company is long gone. The government is paying for I think it's
Remediation?
for remediation forever, because that whole rock wall is made of acid rock. acid
Wow.
Yeah, acid generating, yeah.
a couple of years after they built the roads, they were using that rock for different areas, and all of the culverts had to be changed out because they just
Rotted them,
disintegrated.
yeah.
Disintegrated, yeah.
So bad as caustic H2S.
So now you have you have a federal government that is always constantly remediating this rock on an environmental level, but yet where do we find, is there any documents to prove that they aren't
Well,
following
the
that?
other thing is, we asked them, because the pipeline is going next to that area, we've asked them to, can you test and see if there's acid generating rock in that area where you're proposing to put that pipeline? And what they did was, they went out and sent some people to the top of the mountains, not right where that proposed pipeline is, and tested areas along that mountain range, and they said, we weren't finding any high levels of acid rock. Well, you're not testing at the bottom where you're proposing to put that pipeline, because everything runs down.
Right.
And you're not testing right where it is, but what we'll do is, days before we start digging that hole, we'll test and send samples away and do quick assays to determine whether or not it's PEG, potential acid generating, or NAG, non-acid generating rock. And that usually takes a week, but this is a couple of days before they dig that all up. So even before they get the results, they've already dug everything up.
Right.
And they probably moved all of that acid generating back into the waterway, which then fish, habitat, people are all gonna be affected downstream.
Wow.
And then one last question, and we'll end this off, if you guys are okay with that, is the question that is standing right now is the argument, or I guess the discussions between this Morristown Wet'suwet'en First Nation band as towards the Hereditary chiefs. Now, the Hereditary chiefs, this argument between, is there an argument or is there not an argument?
Really, I think it's more of a misunderstanding of jurisdiction and authority. I'm gonna say the elected chief, Victor Jim, he's actually one of my wing chiefs. But when you start talking on agreements on the territory, that's outside their jurisdiction. And I can't blame them for going and trying to get money. I don't know of a reserve that is well off, but the fact is just the fact that they're talking about something outside where their jurisdiction is. And
So they're claiming a right to that land?
no, they're saying
outside
that
of
they
their-
support the project when they shouldn't be
They
saying
can't
anything
make a
like that.
decision on the land.
Right.
They can only support a project. They can't say, yes, we own that land, but we will support your project. So even in our culture, we can only speak on our section of land, our own house territory. We won't speak on somebody else's house territory. That's their decision, and theirs alone to make. But collectively, as all house groups that are affected, which I think there's between 9 and 11 house groups, they collectively had a meeting and said no. And with that decision making, and in the feast hall, they then went to the feast hall as part of our culture. Go to the feast hall and say, we said no to this project. At this table, Wet'suwet'en law in the feast hall, we've made Wet'suwet'en law by saying no. So it went from a house decision to a clan decision to then in the feast hall for the final decision. That went through already. If you look at what's called, I'm not sure if it's a Kalo or Sam versus Canfor. There's a Justice Dillon in there, and she did paragraphs 14 to 17 that cemented our decision-making process in the BC Supreme Court. So it's upheld, and Canfor and the province of BC didn't contest it. Now it's part of British Columbia law.
So the simple answer is the bands have no jurisdiction on the territories.
Yeah, so they can only support the project in their areas, but no jurisdiction over the territories surrounding
In
outside.
the
That's all they were
house.
looking for. They're asking people even outside of our territory to make a decision. Well, does your territory overlap this area, or do you traditionally use that area? Yeah, we go there, as long as it's giving
Yeah.
them some sort of monetary money at the end.
But what's saving us is our map was put in Supreme Court. Canada, so our outside boundaries are submitted along with the GITSAT. So in the Supreme Court of Canada, when it was submitted in 1977, and no other nation has that. So everything that we got is rock solid, but they'll just draw a line on a map and say, oh yeah, we were there, and then the government will say, well, if you went there, you must have a right. No, they don't.
When they tell you that other NGOs, non-governmental organizations are paying money to the Wet'suwet'en to fund these pipelines, they're mismatching the evidence. The evidence is, yeah, we were taking money from the NGOs to do water quality, environmental studies on the land. We give that information not only back to the NGO, we give it to the province of BC, who had no hand in it at all. But it's free information for them to make decisions as well. So we're not holding anything back, we're not hiding it, we're sharing it.
Interesting.
Very.
It just shows you that the spin on everything that we've heard so far it's so totally different.
So, and then, I'm sorry I said that was the last question, but it digs up more questions.
Okay, we had a guy before that said just one more thing about 10 times.
This'll be my last
Was
one.
that wasn't Columbo, was it?
Columbo, yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Just one more thing.
Yeah.
In all of this, is there a way of reconciling between bands, between hereditary chiefs, between industry, between province, and between federal? Is there
Follow the law is the easiest way.
Pardon me?
Follow the law
Follow the law
and implement under.
and implement what, sorry?
Under.
Un-
You can have that.
This one here?
Yeah.
You can have that.
And so the government's
That's
always,
actually what I was doing in New York all 3 times, was talking about United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, how it affects human rights, because again, the aspect of being human is totally overlooked.
The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
so like I mentioned, in Article 10, they violated Article 10 when they took our people not only off their host territory, but out of Wet'suwet'en territory into somebody else's nation's territory and put them in jail, incarcerated them, and then just left them there.
So in this here, this Oris Noasad, okay, this is the gentleman that I went to Geneva with, that I flew from, yeah, you can take a picture of that. He has nothing to do, no involvement with anything with regards to the United Nations and this.
He
wouldn't
have,
been
I
a
just simply
representative?
haven't met him.
Okay, you just
When I
simply haven't.
speak there, there's 198 countries.
I know. This guy is Canadian, though. He would be a Canadian representative by the name of Orest Nawasad, Chief Groups and Focus Section, Human Rights Treaties Branch, Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Palais des Nations, CH1211, Geneva, East Switzerland. And I spent 8.5 hours on a plane with this gentleman, and picked his brain on a lot of things. So.
Well, the big thing about this here, article, there's another 2 articles in there.
You gotta realize if he gets on one subject, he's gonna keep talking. He's talking about Article 10 in the United Nations Declaration.
And-
I know him because he's my own
Yeah,
brother.
and Article 23 and 29. There's pieces in those 2 articles that talk about programs for First Nations. Government's always saying, well, we can't find any money for you to do these kind of work, like to help your nation. But Article 23 and 29 have the wording of programs, which is where money can be given by the state to First Nations to help them run these programs. And nobody's talking about that. We need those articles to be brought forward so that the government of British Columbia said, John Horgan said in July 2017, we're going to endorse UNDRIP. That's 2 years ago.
Yeah, UNDRIP,
Anywhere
yeah.
close to it.
Yeah, I was following a little bit about UNDRIP in the beginning, so.
So those 2 articles will give them the programs where they can infuse money to help the nations out.
You should underline Article 10, Indigenous people will not be forcibly removed from their homes nor territories. The day after Canada said they would implement and support UNDRIP is the day I spoke in New York. And that's when I told them we're coming back in here to give you a report card on this. That's when they invited me back to Geneva, and the report was a big fat red F. You got Prime Minister Selfie just giving it lip service and going for photos. That was it.
Yep.
There was nothing really heavily implemented by Canada. That's why Now, when Horgan got in, he sent directions and mandates to each one of his ministers that they would uphold and implement UNDRIP again, and still it's not happening. So this last time that I went to New York, they're putting more and more pressure on Canada. But the fact is, it's the Indigenous people of Canada themselves that can implement and uphold UNDRIP. And it's the same thing with that word reconciliation. The government cannot tell us what reconciliation is. I'll tell you what reconciliation is. It's two guilty parties. When they have committed something that they must reconcile to come together, what the hell did the Wet'suwet'en do except be Wet'suwet'en?
Yeah.
That's all we did.
Right.
I got nothing to reconcile for. They do.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I have an issue with that word reconciliation. I don't know. Him and I, our mother went to residential school. What do I need to reconcile over that for? What we need to do is uplift our nation.
Yeah.
Make sure that people don't think that we did something wrong other than be Wet'suwet'en. I
Right.
think being Wet'suwet'en is a criminal act.
It isn't. There's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Our mother, as he said, she was taken from the Taupo River area and had a cabin up there. And there was, our mother and two aunties that were taken right away. And they were put in residential school in Lejac, which is hundreds of miles away. And what happened was they were spending time there. Their dad tried to get them, and he was threatened to be put in prison for 3 months. Just for trying to see his own kids were taken,
Wow.
stolen. And they were beaten because all they knew is Wet'suwet'en language. They didn't know English. And they were beaten every time because they wouldn't speak English. And then they finally broke away with being fed soup and biscuits. And they took some biscuits, and they were like 9, they were very young, in the middle of the winter, and they started walking the train tracks from Lejac. So when you're traveling back that way, you pass a community of Lejac. That's where our mom walked from when she was just a little tiny girl, in the middle of the winter, and walked all the way back to Telqua, which is that next community over. And it took them how many days to walk that distance, and hiding away whenever they seen human, other than natives. And then when they got there, the Indian agent was waiting and took them right back. And then the atrocities that were committed to them is unspeakable. You would never hear anybody being hurt that bad.
And yet it was our mother and our grandmother who told us that without education, you're being left behind. And it's true. I don't think we'd be as advanced as we were if we just focused on all the negative. We know there's so much positive out there.
Exactly.
That's what we need to show our kids.
Exactly.
One of the
That's,
positive is our jurisdiction, our authority, clean water, animals, and the right to be on the territory.
yeah.
Without that, who are we?
I preach that all the time. You gotta stay positive all the time. I know. Yeah.
I have no problem at all speaking the truth. I really don't.
That's myself and him as well. We have no problem speaking the truth because you'll never have to worry about what we said.
Yeah.
And as long as we speak the truth and we talk and tell the way we try to bring it out, it's their choice whether or not they want to accept it.
You're never gonna have 100% agreement in anything. I don't care what nation or nationality you are. You never will. I never have. Before I started here, I was actually executive chair for the colleges and universities, and you wouldn't get it across Canada. And these are from some of the smartest people in what I would consider the world.
Right.
But every once in a while, you better get up and open up that door because you need to allow common sense to come in.
Yes.
That's a lost art, that one.
You gotta admit, if I ever go into a room and I think I'm the smartest man in the room, I'm in the wrong goddamn room.
Yep.
Walking out.
Yep.
You betcha. Well, thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. It was great. I hope we didn't. Do you have any questions for us?
No, it's just, some of the background that we have is, like, he spoke of his training, and even though our mother was tortured in school, she made sure that all of us would get a good education and keep following that path. That's why I went off to university, got my degree, and it helped me because I started off not here.
Right.
But I started off at other nations, and I was part of that Queen of the North sinking, that ferry that sank here in BC. I was on that project for 2 years, learning how to deal with government in regards to the environment.
Right.
And the proponent whose ferry sank because of 2 people messing around in the cockpit.
I don't care what the story is, they were monkeying around on that wheelhouse.
Oh no.
That's why they were fired in the end.
Right.
It came out that they were monkeying around, and 2 people died in that.
Yeah.
And we sent our UVs down, and we sent where their cabin used to be, and we sent where they thought they were last seen. We couldn't find them. What was believed to happen is that when the ferry hit the rock and then it veered out towards center and started to sink,
Yep.
quickly everybody had enough time to go dig out things, but those two people, we believe, jumped in the elevator because their dog was in the vehicle down in the carport, or the level where their car was. And when the power went out, they were stuck in that elevator. So 1,500 feet down is where that ferry is now. Different channels are feeding sediment into that area, and that ferry still looks like it's sailing.
Oh, wow.
But we believe only one of the two large fuel tanks imploded under the pressure.
Right.
It could be the second tank not exploded yet, but it's made of steel.
Right. So we should last, hopefully.
Well, it'll rust.
It'll rust eventually.
Yeah.
But
and
for
then
now, it's okay. But is there any
It's still burping up.
contingency plans of trying to get in and drain it?
No, it's so far down, so deep that you can't get anything down there. The proponent was trying to say, well, there's no life down there, and yet you can see all this plankton swimming around and fish swimming through it. And I said, no, look at the video.
Better fill it with ping pong balls like Mythbusters did.
Yeah. We'll float it back up. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an issue for the people in Harley Bay. When I got a call early in the morning to meet down at Seaplane Base. Didn't give a reason why, so I went there, and I seen other scientists there, and hey, how you doing? Been a while. What project are we on? What are we called here for? That's when the government came in and said, you know what, this is what happened. We need you there. And so we took the immediate area of where the incident occurred, and we took less contaminated and the least contaminated areas, and we do a bunch of quick scat sampling where you take a sample and
System
jar
cause
it up,
analysis.
and then
Is that what you're talking?
they said, yeah,
Yeah.
they said basically there's two people missing, maybe more, so be aware you may come upon a body or two.
Yeah.
And so we did all of this. I was wearing my floater suit, and we quickly did that, and then I was back on the float plane and back into town and gave them my samples, gave them my report, and then I sat in my office, took off my floater suit, hung it up on the rack, and went, holy shit, what a day. And then, you know, every day for 2 weeks after that, every day I went back to the office, the first thing I smelled was diesel.
Yeah.
The heavy, strong smell of diesel,
Right.
because I was only in there a few hours doing all of that. The people of Harley Bay live there.
Wow.
So they were getting headaches, it's in their furniture, their clothing, and their whole livelihood was
Leaching into
destroyed.
everything.
Well, my degree for myself is, so I maybe should have introduced myself at the beginning, is I was 18 years in the oil and gas industry. I started out roughnecking, drilling, completions, went to completions.
Both your autobiographies.
Oh, okay.
And you call it here.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate you coming and sit down and chatting. I understand the biased opinion, or, you know, understanding how
I
we,
actually watch your blog too, so
Awesome.
gotta do research, I should.
Yeah,
but
that's
I didn't
right.
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
we did the research as well, and that's why we're trying to just get to the bottom of it. But I also hold a degree in occupational health, safety, environment as well.
All you gotta do, and I truly believe this, step on the land, breathe the air, and eat the food. Then you get a better feeling of what we're doing.
That's right.
If you come here when the salmon is running, you'll see why we're so very protective of what we do. Mike is very talented. I hate to say it because he's my brother, but he's very good at what he does.
Right.
You know,
His
a lot
head's gonna explode, and I'll have to
a
buy
lot
a
of
new
people,
hat.
I have people that come up to me and say,
That's what he
I
says
wake
about
up in the
me.
middle of the night and I think about all the things that are happening, and I wake up and I wake up in a cold sweat and I'm going, what the hell are we gonna do? There's so much to do. And I told him, you know, I was out on the field the other day and I walked along, and as I'm looking for my survey, I walked this trail and there's a grizzly bear poop on the road. And I looked at that grizzly bear poop and I says, geez, that bear might have dropped that last week, yesterday. The bear could be dead for all I know, but that shit's still here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, and it's just like him and I too, like we're nobodies, you know, like we're no official anything to any capacity, but we just felt, like I said, I met Pat through the convoy, and we just kinda, you know, we seen we were both on the path that we needed to do something with our lives that actually was gonna try and make it better, not only for us, but for everybody.
Make a difference in our country.
We really thought we needed to embark on a mission that got us here today, so.
I
Yeah.
made sure that I went to the tar sands, I made sure I was up at Treaty 8 just to see what's there. And, like even here, the coal mine that's in Tulpa that's proposed there, ran during the 50s and 60s, it was underground. But the coal seam goes right to the airport, the other side of Cinders. So there's coal bed methane here, so we know if the pipelines go through, then they got access to that
Release
other,
that too.
and then here comes the 18,000 wells they talk about.
Yeah, they're gonna talk about this as well.
We know what we do, and we know the long term effects of it. That mountain over there, not the ski hill, the one right beside it,
Mhm.
second largest molybdenum deposit on the entire planet. And they were gonna take the whole thing. So there are things that need to stay. It's that simple. I don't think that anything that we do is gonna stop the world from rotating, but everything that we allow it to.
Right,
can
it's
throw it off
going-
balance.
That's right, that's
So
right.
that's the way we view it.
Yes.
You gotta have that holistic view of it.
Yes, right, it's bigger than all of us.
And
Well, now
science is
we've-
the best way
You
to
guys
do
have
it.
just educated the crap out of us.
Yes.
And I appreciate it, and I wanna say thank you. And now we have to reconvene and collect our thoughts. We will not in no way, by no means, and I would love to, I say this from my band to the Wet'suwet'en. I have, my truth stick isn't in my hand, but I'm speaking with my truth stick right now. I will not allow any smear or flipping or 180-degree turns on any of our conversation today. We will speak the truth, and we will bring your truth to the people of Canada as well.
We can only speak on what we believe in, and we believe that we will always win, and we believe that if we do our jobs right, we conduct ourselves properly, we'll always have clean water. People die without water.
That's
You've
right.
got to look after it.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
It's
the
pretty
animals and the
simple.
land, it's all about.
But when the government comes across it and utilizing industry to create genocide on your land, then there's an issue.
Yep.
And it's bigger than the Wet'suwet'en because we don't wanna go anywhere, we're not gonna leave. I had an analogy of one person that said, a pipeline proponent says, what harm will it do putting that pipeline in there? It's gonna create jobs and everything else. And the guy goes, he has this picture, right? And he goes, imagine the picture of the Mona Lisa. And you take a felt pen, you put a line across that Mona Lisa. What does it do to that picture? That's what you're planning for your land.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It changes the landscape, it changes the belief, and it changes how we're gonna teach our children on the land as well.
Yeah, I always use an analogy of Canada as just one big sandbox. And it's like you said earlier, it's a pretty young country. And all of a sudden now, all the bullies wanna come and push us out of our sandbox.
There's nothing the matter with keeping up with progress, but the world changes. It won't be the same. I said it earlier. People are gonna look back 50 years from now and say, why in the hell were they even fighting over a pipeline? Look where we are now. We didn't need it.
Right.
If you actually think about where we'll be in 50 years.
Yeah.
A decade ago, we weren't in this situation. We weren't a decade ago, but we are now.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Like Saturday, just did the murdered and missing women, like that beautiful hill right there is where her body was found. We just did it on Saturday, and they got man camps coming, that scares me.
This is the Highway of Tears.
Yet this beautiful territory, look at it, and it's called the Highway of Tears. And everybody that I know has relatives that are part of that.
Affected by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, once again, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
Much
so much.
appreciated.
We're only here trying to get solutions as
No, and
well.
And that's what
not
we're trying to
be
do
bad.
as well, too,
No,
right?
That's exactly what we're all trying to do, so thank you very much.
Yeah, and,
Thank you.
you ever get the
Thank you.
opportunity to go into, actually just a bookstore down here on Main. We got our history book. That's actually why I left. I went to go get the history book and I couldn't find
Oh.
one here. Somebody's reading it. Yeah, we put out our second edition. That's pretty small. It's only 400 and small pages. But then we did another one, the shared history, and that was on the history of what they called Indian Town. Like Mike talked about with the signs, no Indians or dogs allowed. They simply burnt us out, and that was in the 40s. It's not that long ago.
Can I ask for one picture? Maybe two pictures. I'd like to get a picture of the two of yous with your territory,
Okay.
and then as well maybe a picture for us to put in our blog, sitting with you guys, if that's okay. And I think I got enough room on this camera. I'd just like to take that one there, maybe move it into a little bit more of an easier lighted spot.
I said connectedness, cause look at that, it's all connected, right?
Always the circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you
This
can
is our
see the
wellness
circle
framework
and the
for our
rocks.
children.
Yeah.
Everything's connected. Pretty basic level.
So the lines and the rocks are all showing connection. That's like all of us are all connected.
You call that the home fires and then the 13 houses of our nation? And this is what our kids ask. We want to be seen and we want to be heard.
That's what JNS are doing as well.
Yeah.
Canadians want to be heard. Not only seen, we've been seen. Now it's time to be heard.